Imagine a classical Renaissance masterpiece, right? Like a pristine Raphael or a Ghirlandaio painting.
Right.
But then imagine it just getting digitally skinned, flattened out completely like a pelt, and then mutated into this shape-shifting alien.
It is a pretty wild visual, yeah.
It's intense, and that specific, almost violent kind of visual collision is basically the daily obsession of this Montreal-based artist and designer, Pierre Duranleau.
Yeah, he's been at this for a while now.
Exactly. Since 2012, he's been steadily building this massive, really labyrinthine project that he calls the Transmutations series. So welcome to a brand new deep dive, by the way. Today, for you listening, we're going to unpack all of this. We're dissecting the deep, esoteric science fiction lore hidden in these canvases and, the complex digital alchemy he uses to actually create them.
And, I mean, the term alchemy fits perfectly here, honestly, because he isn't just, putting paint on a canvas in a traditional way.
Right.
He's fundamentally questioning how art is even constructed in this sort of post-digital age we're in. We're looking at a process where the physical and the digital realms just kind of feed off each other.
Like a loop.
Exactly. A continuous destructive loop. It completely challenges our perception of space and authoritative visual rules and really just the boundaries of the medium itself.
Well, so before we could even wrap our heads around what he's painting, we really have to look under the hood at the methodology, right? Because the how is just as important as the what here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
With the Transmutation series, the software mechanics aren't just like a convenient tool. They are the entire conceptual foundation.
So break that down for us, because
Okay.
he's doing something way more convoluted than just sitting down at an easel with a palette, right?
Way more. The
Yeah.
workflow actually begins entirely in a virtual environment.
Yeah.
So he constructs these really elaborate 3D scenes using software like Softimage-RenderMap.
Yeah.
But rather than building clean synthetic textures from scratch like a standard 3D artist might do, he actually imports scanned, heavily degraded photographs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then he mathematically forces those 2D photos to become surface texture maps. Like he wraps them around the 3D geometry he's built in the software.
Right, but then he doesn't just render a polished 3D scene with perfect lighting, right? Like you would for, say, an architectural visualization or a movie.
No, not at all.
He he breaks the model. He extracts the image by literally unwrapping the digital entity.
And that right there is the defining mechanism of the whole series.
Yeah.
He uses a legacy tool called Softimage-RenderMap. But again, he doesn't take a standard virtual photograph of the object. He forces the software to sample the geometry normals.
Now, just so we're all on the same page, in 3D math, that's basically a directional vector, right?
Exactly, yeah. It
Yeah.
just tells the software which way a specific polygon is facing in virtual space.
Okay, I got it.
So by sampling those normals and calculating the object's overall topology, the software mathematically unwraps that 3D skin and just flays it out completely flat into a 2D bitmap.
It's honestly like a form of digital taxidermy.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, think about it like peeling a globe to make a flat world map, but he's slicing a three-dimensional body down the seams and peeling it open. You see this so vividly in a piece he did called The Shroud of Morgo.
Oh, yes. That one is incredible.
Right, and the double meaning there is brilliant. Because when we hear the word shroud, I think our minds naturally jump to the religious artifact, the Shroud of Turin.
Right. The imprint of a 3D face flattened onto a 2D plane of cloth.
Exactly. But in 3D animation terminology, shrouding literally refers to the act of wrapping or texture mapping an object.
Right. So Duranleau is basically weaponizing that exact historical concept. The Shroud of Morgo operates on all these multiple planes at once. Visually, you have this kind of spectral, distorted visage pushing through this dense digital fog.
It looks so eerie.
It really does.
Yeah.
But conceptually, it's an actual pun on the rendering mechanics required to generate the image in the first place.
And the distortion is what makes it so striking to look at, because when you mathematically force a really complex 3D topography onto a totally flat plane, the software has to compromise somewhere.
Exactly. It doesn't know what else to do.
Right, so it stretches the pixels, it tears the seams, and it creates this artifacting that a human hand would never naturally just choose to paint.
Which introduces this whole layer of controlled chaos. The artist is basically relinquishing absolute control to the rendering algorithm.
He's letting the machine do the heavy lifting, creatively speaking.
Yeah, he generates these exhaustive template studies. You can actually see this in his Junge UV projections, where the mathematical unwrapping process entirely dictates the final aesthetic.
Oh, wow.
So he's collaborating with the machine's inherent limitations. He's allowing the software's struggle to translate dimensions to become the actual art.
And then, only after all that destructive digital rendering, he transposes the image into the physical world.
Right. He painstakingly reproduces that chaotic bitmap with actual acrylic and oil paint on a physical canvas.
It's wild. So, okay, we have this really aggressive digital taxidermy process, but I want to pivot a bit because we need to examine why he applies this to classical art.
That's a huge part of the puzzle.
Yeah, because it's not just a random choice of canvas. It feels like a targeted attack on how we've all been taught to see. Like he routinely uses reproductions of high Renaissance paintings as the foundational templates for these 3D unwrappings.
Yeah, you see it in titles like the Raphael Deformation or the Ghirlandaio Overdrive Triptych.
Right, so he's taking these universally recognized masterpieces, feeding them into his 3D space, and subjecting them to this geometry normal sampling.
And the classical subjects just become these swirling, molten, almost grotesque reorganizations of color and form.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit. If the end result is just a molten, unrecognizable distortion, why use a Raphael at all?
That's a fair question.
Right, like isn't relying on a historical masterpiece just a conceptual crutch? If his goal is to destroy classical perspective, why not just build a flawed 3D room from scratch, light it, and destroy that? I mean, obliterating a famous painting almost feels like a high-tech form of digital vandalism.
Well, I mean, vandalism kind of implies destruction without a real purpose.
Yeah.
The appropriation of these specific works is actually a philosophical necessity for him.
How so?
Well, a generic 3D room just doesn't carry centuries of institutional authority.
Yeah.
We really have to consider what the Renaissance represents in the entire history of visual technology.
Okay, yeah.
It was the era that literally codified linear perspective. If you look at theorists like David Hockney, he explored this in his book, Secret Knowledge. Renaissance masters likely utilized early optical technologies, things like the camera obscura, to achieve that flawless realism.
Right, they basically established the absolute rules of visual reality.
Exactly. Rules that Western art and eventually photography and cinema still largely rely on to this day.
So they basically wrote the dominant source code for how humans perceive a 2D image as a 3D space.
Exactly. Therefore, to truly challenge our perception of space, Duranleau has to attack the source code itself.
I see.
By deliberately unwrapping a Raphael using modern computer-generated algorithms, he is juxtaposing the trusted ancient technology of physical perspective against the chaotic, fluid technology of modern CG.
That makes a lot of sense.
He's demonstrating that our grasp on reality is only as solid as the lens we use to view it, The perspective gets obliterated, the space is folded, and the authority of the original image is just entirely dismantled.
And the destruction of that classical reality creates a kind of vacuum, right? Which Duranleau then fills with these incredibly dense esoteric mythologies.
Oh yeah, the lore goes deep.
Really deep. This is where the titles of the works really unlock the broader narrative for the listener. The Renaissance aesthetics are replaced by the heavy science fiction lore that populates his Anthropotechnicon series.
Yeah, you see a massive recurring obsession with Philip K. Dick.
Yes. Specifically, this character named Morgo Rahn Wilc from a pretty obscure novel, Our Friends from Frolics 8.
Which brings us right back to the Shroud of Morgo. In Philip K. Dick's universe, Morgo is this sentient, protoplasmic alien who travels to Earth.
Right, to help a revolutionary named Thors Pravoni defeat this telepathic ruling class.
Exactly. But Duranleau doesn't choose Morgo just because he's a fan of random 1970s sci-fi.
Yeah, it's way more deliberate than that.
He chooses Morgo because a formless, shape-shifting entity is the ultimate conceptual embodiment of his entire artistic process.
Because Morgo basically has no fixed state, he's just fluid matter.
Exactly, and that perfectly mirrors the medium itself.
Right, Duranleau's source images never have a fixed state either. Like they exist as physical photographs first, then they become 3D digital spheres, then flattened 2D bitmaps, and finally physical oil paintings again.
It's constant mutation. Morgo is the perfect muse for a process that simply refuses to sit still.
And the Anthropotechnicon series uses these characters to explore this really intense collision of industrial age mythology and transhumanism. But the lore gets even crazier when he starts merging Philip K. Dick's aliens with early 20th century esoteric philosophy.
Yeah, that's where he brings in Rudolf Steiner.
Right. And that intersection is probably most evident in the piece Gumbasho. Here, he takes that shape-shifting Morgo concept and basically maps it onto Steiner's cosmological writings, specifically this concept of the eighth sphere.
And Steiner's eighth sphere is a truly terrifying metaphysical concept if you dig into it.
It really is.
It's this holographic projection, basically a planetary body existing alongside our own, that embodies the absolute pinnacle of extreme materialism.
Like nothing spiritual at all.
Zero.
Ugh.
In this cosmology, it's the ultimate spiritual dead end, a place completely devoid of a soul, where human development is just violently halted and consumed by cold, hard matter.
Yeah.
So within Duranleau's narrative, this entity, Ho, acts as the antithesis to the eighth sphere.
It's a formless, energetic force paralleling that protoplasmic nature of Morgo that exercises positive spiritual will against this crushing materialism. But I have to point out an observation here because there is this glaring, fascinating irony in how Duranleau executes this concept.
Oh, the tools he uses.
Yes, he is using incredibly materialistic, highly technical, calculation-heavy computer software, which are literally the defining tools of our modern materialistic age, right?
Exactly.
And he's using them to depict a spiritual force fighting against the ultimate planet of materialism.
It's a profound tension, for sure. Yeah. He is essentially utilizing the tools of the eighth sphere to defeat the eighth sphere.
That is so cool.
It isn't a rejection of technology at all. It's honestly a hijacking of it.
Yeah.
He is forcing the cold mathematics of rendering algorithms and UV unwrapping protocols to somehow capture something purely energetic.
Wow.
It really highlights the core paradox of transhumanism. This deep desire to transcend the physical body, but doing it by using intensely physical industrial machinery.
He's forcing the algorithm to map the soul. I love that. And because entities like Morgo and Ho are inherently protoplasmic, it dictates that the artwork depicting them can never truly be finished either.
Right, because the shapeshifter is never done shifting.
Exactly. This formlessness drives the final and arguably most obsessive phase of his entire methodology, which is just the endless iterations.
Yeah, I mean, the traditional life cycle of a painting normally ends when the varnish dries.
Right, it goes on a wall and that's it.
Yeah, the image is locked in time, cemented as a singular historical object. But Duranleau completely rejects that finality. Once he has spent weeks laboriously painting his digitally unwrapped image onto a physical canvas, he subjects that physical object to another whole layer of transmutation.
He actually scans the physical acrylic and oil painting right back into the computer. He redigitizes the physical object he just spent weeks painting.
He pulls the art right back across the dimensional threshold. And once it's digitized again, he feeds that single image through an exhaustive gauntlet of 2D applications and filters,
generating just an avalanche of variations for a single subject.
Endless variations.
You see this iterative obsession really clearly in his works, inspired by Iain M Banks' Culture series novels, specifically the pieces centered around the character Genar Hofoen from the novel Excession.
Oh, yeah.
And we also see it in the Sprawling series based on his Dr. Oppenheimer painting. If you scroll through his archives, you don't just see one portrait of Oppenheimer or Hofoen, you see dozens, all mutated through various aesthetic lenses.
But it's important to note that the filters he selects are not just, random Instagram presets.
Right, he's not just making it look sepia.
No, they are carefully chosen to visually manifest the transhumanist themes of the lore we've been talking about.
Yeah, consider the specific aesthetic flavor of the filters he relies on. He uses ones called Dream Scrap, X-Ray, Pia Op Art, Beast, Lomonagic, Imgenoise, Chevworn, Anaglyph.
It sounds like a hacker's toolkit.
It really does. But when he runs the Genar Hofoen piece through the Imverenese filter, he isn't just making it look fuzzy for fun. In the Culture novels, Hofoen is a biological entity constantly interfacing with hyper-advanced, godlike machine intelligences.
Right.
So by applying this aggressive visual noise, Duranleau is physically mimicking the breakdown and decay of biological data trying to survive in a purely digital environment.
So the filter actually becomes a narrative device.
Exactly.
Same thing when he applies the X-ray filter to the Dr. Oppenheimer series. He visually dissects the materialist themes of the eighth sphere we talked about.
Oh, how so?
Well, the X-ray essentially strips away the surface of the oil paint, revealing the harsh, skeletal data structure underneath it all.
That makes total sense.
It exposes the cold mathematics hiding beneath the traditional medium. And then, when he applies the Beast filter, the color palette becomes super aggressive, almost radioactive.
Simulating that volatile energy.
Exactly. It simulates the mutating energy of a protoplasmic entity like Morgo, just struggling to maintain its form.
And it all anchors back to the actual title of the series, right? Transmutation. A transmutation is just a constant state of becoming.
Always shifting.
By endlessly running a scanned physical painting back through these digital filters, the artwork ceases to be a static object. It becomes a living, mutating entity. The process itself is just an unbroken loop.
It begins as a philosophical concept, takes shape as a 3D digital topography, is mathematically flayed into a 2D map, gets painstakingly birthed into the physical world via oil and acrylic, only to be consumed right back into the digital realm to spawn dozens of new iterations.
It's incredible.
It really is a breathing, cyclical ecosystem of creation and destruction.
It completely forces you to reevaluate what you're even looking at. You are no longer viewing a painting as a window into a frozen historical moment, you know?
No, not at all.
You're looking at a single fleeting frame in this endless transmission of data. Pierre Duranleau is orchestrating this really violent, brilliant collision between the rigid, sacred optics of the Renaissance and the fluid, totally bizarre cosmologies of esoteric science fiction.
He's basically using the very mechanics of 3D software to prove that our perception of reality is entirely malleable.
And that actually leads perfectly to a provocative thought I want you to carry with you long after we wrap up today.
All right, lay it on us.
Well, we've spent all this time examining how an artist can use software to digitally unwrap a 3D entity into a flattened 2D plane, deliberately destroying classical perspective and basically altering its fundamental reality.
Right.
But if you look at the trajectory of our own daily lives...
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. As our personal and professional realities become increasingly wrapped in digital screens and algorithms and augmented environments, we really have to ask a difficult question. Are we the ones being transmuted?
That is heavy.
Are our own complex, three-dimensional, physical lives slowly being flattened out, re-rendered, and just fed through the endless filters of the technology we interact with every single day?
Wow. It suggests that humanity itself might just be the raw material for the machine's next great aesthetic variation.
Exactly. It's definitely something to seriously consider the next time you find yourself endlessly scrolling through your phone, you know?
Truly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the methodology and madness of Pierre Duranleau's Transmutations. Keep questioning the algorithms, and as always, keep looking at the world from multiple dimensions.